This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and now for something kind of different, but well, maybe yes, maybe no. This is the Lenovo Legion Go. You gaming enthusiasts already know about Lenovo Legion laptops. They're the laptops that everybody loves these days for, well, for gaming. Value, build, quality, all that sort of thing. So they decided to do what Asus did with the ROG Ally and Steam previously with the Steam Deck, though that's not a Windows-based device, and make a Windows portable gaming device. We're going to look at it now. All right, so first off, obviously you saw me holding that. This is a big handheld device. This makes a Nintendo Switch look like, I don't know, a miniature device, and it's bigger than the Asus ROG Ally and the Steam Deck. This will either be a plus or a minus for you. You know who you are. If we found the other devices too small, you want a big 8.8-inch, big is a relative term here, display versus a 7-inch display or something like that, then you're going to be thrilled with it. But it is 854 grams, 1.88 pounds, almost 2 pounds. It's a heavy thing to hold, folks. So, portability, you know, ironically, because I was looking at and seeing how thick it is and all that sort of thing and how wide, and I put it next to a 14-inch razor blade, and by volume, given the fact that it's considerably thicker, actually, I don't know how much space you're saving by taking this versus a laptop, but obviously this one has built-in controllers, so those who like controller gaming, it's easier to hold, carry with you. You know, charger's a lot smaller. There are reasons. Anyway, you know who you are about it. I have really big hands and long fingers. I'm a very tall woman also, so even I, with my long fingers, find that my fingers wrap around and I'm hitting all those nice extra buttons they added on the back. I was a little bothered by the rear buttons on the Asus ROG Ally, but this one, my God, the buttons have buttons. There's so many buttons. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Some people have said it feels kind of sharp in their hands. I don't feel that so much. It probably has more to do with your hand size, the weight of the device, and the weight you're holding it. But you know what? Lenovo said, hey, we know this is heavy, so we're going to do like Nintendo did with the detachable controllers, Joy-Cons in Nintendo Switch speak. So nice. And then we're going to put a kickstand on the back. So brilliant. They did so much with the hardware here that's really well thought out. And those are some of those things. So obviously, if you're detaching the controllers, holding them in your hands, and putting the thing on a kickstand on the table, then you care a bit less, a lot less about the weight. And then they did even more, and they threw more in the box than competitors do. You get a case with this, not bad, a ballistic nylon zipper case, semi-rigid. You also get the detachable right controller can be switched to FPS, first-person shooter mode, right? Little red switch, you just switch it after you take it off. And they gave you this little stand in the box. I know a lot of you see this little round accessory in the box. You're like, what is it? That's a stand for the right controller if you detach it. And you can use it kind of sort of like a mouse and put it on the desk for more precision in first-person shooters or as a mouse substitute. It also has a D-pad, well, touchpad on the right-hand controller too. And so for those of you who are right-handed, the 90% of the population, you have a teeny-weeny touchpad. I'm left-handed. It's kind of lost on me, as is even the right detachable controller. For the 10% of us left-handed people out there who find it nearly impossible to effectively game with a right-handed pointing device, well, there's that. But nonetheless, nicely done with the hardware stuff. It also looks pretty nice. I mean, I think black just tends to look a little more quality than white. Maybe that's just me, but white plastic never screams, I'm a posh piece. Sorry, PlayStation 5. It feels solid in the hands. It certainly obviously feels weighty. And the price on this isn't too bad. $700 to $750, depending on whether you want a 512 gigabyte or a 1 terabyte. There's no other difference in terms of RAM or the CPU. You get the AMD Z1 Extreme processor, which is the same one used in the higher end of the Asus ROG Ally devices. I certainly recommend the Extreme. It's more extreme, it's more powerful. So you're working with an iGPU here. It is RDNA 3 graphics iGPU. You're looking at a nice, good ultrabook level of performance, which would be abysmal for gaming, right? And this is the same thing I said with the ROG Ally. But the clever thing with these handheld devices is because you're taking that and shrinking it into a smaller screen, it suddenly becomes mostly okay, even if you're playing AAA titles. Why? Because you would never want to play a 1280 by 800 resolution on your big screen laptop, would you, right? Because it's just not going to look really good. Or even setting the graphics quality to low is kind of like blech. But when you're squeezing it down to a screen this size, suddenly everything looks pretty good and it looks pretty sharp. Now, before I go on much further, just assuming you all know about this thing, this is Windows and a tiny screen. It's not the easiest thing to use. It's for people who are very comfortable with Windows. You Windows PC gaming laptop people out there who want something on the go. This is not turnkey, just turn it on and play games like a Nintendo Switch, or even sort of the way the Steam Deck has become. It had a rocky start, but it's pretty smooth and easy to use. This isn't something you give to your 7-year-old and say, here, knock yourself out, because, Windows updates, firmware, tweaking display resolutions, all those joyous things that are for you geeky guys and gals out there. Now, another strong point for the Lenovo is that 8.8-inch IPS display, bigger than other Windows and competing non-Windows handhelds for the most part, but it's also 2560 by 1600 resolutions. IPS is 144 hertz. It's glossy, it's a touchscreen, it's Gorilla Glass 5, but that's nice, sharp, high resolution. You would think you can't play any games at that resolution. Not true. I was playing Fallout New Vegas. Okay, that's a game from 2010, but still, I think these handhelds, the sweet spot is playing a lot of older games, and it looked great and played great, and 60 frames and better of frame rate going on this with graphics set to low and medium on it. So it's doable. It's not bad. The display makes it nice. It's also full P3 color gamut, so it's very colorful. It's not very well color tuned, so those of you who just care about such things, and maybe the colors look a little garish even because they're a little bit amped up, but I think most people just like bright, colorful games. And they claim 500 nits of brightness. We measured 525 nits, so they did it. So it's a very nice screen. Another good thing they did with the hardware here on this Windows 11 Home Mini PC is you got two USB-C 40 gigabit per second ports. ROG Ally only has one. So that's nice. One of them is on the bottom. It's often pretty awkward to use that one. I typically plug the charger in on the bottom and maybe a hub with a keyboard and mouse up top, and then use the kickstand tilted far enough back that it's not jamming against that lower USB-C plug, because yes, the charger is going to use one of those USB-Cs. And yes, you can use an eGPU with this, which is getting kind of crazy, right? And yes, it supports DisplayPort out, just like the Ally. So if you want to plug this into a monitor and turn it into a desktop substitute, you can do so to do productivity work or schoolwork, whatever it is that you're doing with it. You also have a headphone jack, no surprise there, and you have a micro SD card slot. Will it be more reliable? I know some people had problems with their Ally's micro SD card slot. Too early to say. One thing I will mention, and I don't know if this is AMD, I mean, I love AMD. I have an AMD gaming laptop and all that sort of thing, but they just are a little flaky with their USB-C ports dropping out, and I've seen that happen occasionally on this one. Bottom one more often than the top one, but I often do game restores from fast SSDs, right, connect over USB-C, and you're restoring an 80 gigabyte game and it keeps cutting out. It's just not really entertaining there. This has 16 gigabytes of low-power DDR5X RAM clocked at 7,500 megahertz fast RAM, and you have an M.2 SSD, again 512 gig or 1 terabyte. It is a 2242, so you can open it up, and you could upgrade it if you wanted to do so. It has stereo speakers. That's about as much as you want to say about this. They fire up from the top edges. I don't know if this is a constraint because of the controller detaching mechanism and all that sort of thing, but they're pretty weak sauce, and yeah. Which, okay, maybe we would just accept happily, but compared to the ROG Ally, which punches way above its weight, that thing is loud, has more bass, and I can understand how they're doing it. These are pretty mediocre. Thank God for the headphone jack, which you might need a bit to overcome fan noise. This is a little bit noisy when you're playing games, especially if you have it set to 20 watt, which is the high performance mode, or the custom mode where you can go all the way to 30 watts on this thing. It sounds like an Ultrabook. It's a whoosh of air. Ours isn't whining or anything like that, or a high pitch, but you'll hear it. As you no doubt noticed by now, the rings around the joysticks are backlit with LEDs. You can program that too, just like the ROG Ally. That's nice, that's cute. That gets old pretty quick though. I typically actually turn them off. One thing about attaching, shall I say, the Joy-Cons is there's a release button and you pull down on it. To do that, it is difficult. It is stiff. You kind of feel like you're breaking it. Putting it on, a little stiff. This is not the smooth, nice rails that you see on a Nintendo Switch. At the end of the world, no, it's not. Some people have said their right Joy-Con is a little looser than the left when it's attached. I don't have that problem with this one. So the hardware is sounding pretty good, and by the way, the performance level on this is what you would expect. It's not so different from the ROG Ally. You've got the same processor, for example, a little faster RAM, but you don't have variable refresh rate on the display though. What is that, VRR? That just means that it matches the frame rate to what the GPU is outputting, so it might not look quite as smooth, you know, but it's a handheld gaming device. I'm not going to scream about that, but the software is a work in progress. Lenovo sent this out to reviewers in the United States pretty late, like right around release day, so it's not like we've had this thing forever. And I can see why, because when we first got it, even then, Lenovo Legion software was crashing often enough and doing weird things, and they have been putting a lot of effort into improving it. Now, I mean, so did Asus with the ROG Ally. That thing has come far fast. And Lenovo has been very transparent on their blog about what they're doing, and I think they'll come pretty far, pretty fast, but not as many features as the ROG Ally. Like, I love that performance overlay and a quick performance switcher, and I can see my frame rates and other data, temperature, and all that stuff really easily. Gaming enthusiasts like that stuff. This is a device for gaming enthusiasts. Legion's a little more basic. It's a game launcher. In fact, it launches maximized when you start the device up. You can minimize it so you can actually see the Windows desktop if you want. It's okay. It doesn't give you a whole lot of settings. You can see on screen what you can do, which isn't a whole lot. They'll probably add more features. One thing I'd like to see is the ability to set the VRAM in the app instead of having to go into BIOS where you hit volume up and the power button to get into BIOS. And then you can change your VRAM. For our test, I set it to 4 GB, which is more of a sweet spot for games. I wouldn't go above that. Your next option up is 8. There isn't a 6 now. They will be adding that. But 8 starts to starve Windows of RAM at that point. One more thing about games and compatibility, though. You know, you would think that would be a problem with this thing. Not too much. Most games I've tested actually run. But the fact that the display natively runs in portrait mode, which you would never know as your everyday casual end user, because it boots into Windows. Windows just handles the display rotation. Even the BIOS runs in landscape mode. But it can be a problem for old games because reasons, software coding and all this sort of thing. But occasionally newer games too, like Red Dead Redemption 2. It wouldn't give me the 16:10 aspect ratio. The display resolutions weren't right. You have to run it in windowed mode, no, even borderless, certainly not full screen, and there's no integer scaling right now. Maybe Lenovo will enable that. You can do a registry edit, so that means that you can take the display resolution and drop it perfectly in half, and it shouldn't look too blurry. So going down to 800p from 1600p. I had to do that registry edit just to do that with Red Dead 2. And the frame rate of Red Dead 2 was not real great. With everything set to low and running at 800p, 1280 by 800, that was about 25 frames per second. Not so good. Other games that I tested, again, like the Ally, remarkably good because you're running them at lower resolutions and lower quality settings, and it's still looking just fine. This has a 49 watt-hour battery and a 65 watt very compact charger. You're still running Windows in a handheld, right? So don't expect too much from that. That's about the same capacity battery as you would find in a 13-inch Ultrabook, so it's not that that's bad, but just like with a 13-inch Ultrabook, if you decided you're going to go play Skyrim Anniversary Edition, your battery life's going to go pretty fast, right? Same thing here. If you're playing games, and this is the unfortunate thing, it's a handheld device. You would like to play games unplugged, wouldn't you? Performance stays pretty high, which is good compared to the typical Windows laptop that's set to really drop down your speeds. But maybe 2 hours is what you can get out of this if you're playing a AAA title at best, you know. And if you're just using it for productivity work, well, you could get about 4.5 hours from it. I know some of you have asked about just buying this to use it as a tablet. I assume you also want to play some games on the side, or why do this at all? I know there's not many 8-9-inch Windows tablets on the market anymore, and part of the reason is the UI really never successfully took off for Windows as a touchscreen device. It's annoying to use this just with your finger, you know. You're going to want to plug in a keyboard and a mouse and all that sort of thing. If you're going on the go just to use it as a small tablet, there are those limitations. Personally, I would look at something like a Surface Pro device or something like that. If I wanted a tablet on the go, still pretty compact, actually not much heavier if you don't take the keyboard cover with you. My personal opinion. There are others. There are, like, we've reviewed one netbook products and even a 10-inch product, which built-in keyboard, 360-degree rotation. Even that I feel like would be a better kind of tablet device, but you could do it. You can also set this up as a desktop, and that I see no problems with that. Like I say, just plug it into a hub, you got a monitor, you got a keyboard, you got a mouse, and it can be a desktop substitute just fine. But tablet on the go, I don't know. So that's the Lenovo Legion Go. Okay, yes, it's not like it has a whole lot of competition in the world, does it? So, but it's an exciting new space, and it does let you bring Windows gaming on the go anywhere you want to be, right? And the nice thing about Windows, obviously, is the appeal of, it's not Steam Deck, which means you can do more than just Steam. Of course, there are hacks and tweaks, so you can get, like, you know, Xbox Game Pass running on it and all that sort of thing too. But with this, you don't have to do any of that. You want to run Windows-based emulators to emulate your favorite console, you can do that. You want to run the Epic Game Store on this, you can do that too, and EA and all that sort of thing. So it's versatile. And for those of you who like the idea of a handheld, but you just want it bigger and you like the detachable joysticks, particularly, I mean, the hardware is really well done on this. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.